Good evening. Welcome to Government Accountability Oversight. You are joined with me today. I am the chair, Councilwoman Donna Purvis, and we're joined with my co-chair, Anthony Piagettini. We do not have anything on the agenda, but today I thought it would be a good opportunity for us to have some discussion about what the purpose and the role of this committee is. And so I'm going to just read something that I prepared, a statement. I'd like to welcome my colleagues who will be joining co-chair Councilman Piagettini and myself as chair of this committee. I'd like to thank our newly elected president of the council for having the faith in both Tony and I to lead this committee. He led by example and was passionate about equity and fairness while always being appreciative of those willing to donate their time serving on boards. We would like the year to start off with creating a dialogue and have an open discussion on the purpose and role of this committee. It's the role of the committee to do the following: vote on prospective board members that have been appointed by the mayor's office. We are responsible for carefully vetting these individuals to make certain that they intend to serve with honesty and transparency, not for personal or business gain. The boards of these government entities and quasi-government agencies serve the citizens of Louisville and should always operate with public interest. If there are concerns with any of these agencies and allegations come our way, it's our duty to investigate these matters to make certain that integrity and humility are at the forefront of these operations. So with this, we're ready to start our discussion, but what I'd like for everyone to do is properly introduce themselves. Thank you.
This meeting is being held pursuant to KRS 61.826 and Council Rule 5A, read in full.
Thank you. Can we, because some of us are new, this is why I feel it's important for us to have this, our first meeting, introducing everyone. This is a different committee, unlike the other ones, as some of our seasoned people, I didn't say old, I said seasoned, people can attest to. So can everyone at least introduce themselves? Yes.
Councilman Kevin Kramer, I represent District 11, which is a little bit of Hikes Point and a chunk of J-Town, and then over towards Shelbyville Road out by Valhalla.
I'm Jonathan Joseph, District 12, PRP, Valley Station, a little bit of Shively.
Crystal Bast, District 14, and I represent PRP and Valley Station.
District 1, Councilwoman Tammy Hawkins. I represent Lake Dreamland, Cameron Road, Parkland, Park Duval, and Algonquin.
Hi, I'm Councilwoman Paula McCraney, District 7. It encompasses 19 small suburban cities and a lot of neighborhoods. It includes parts of St. Matthews, Linden, Windy Hills, Crossgate, Plantation, and I could go on, but it's Eastern Jefferson County.
I'm Councilman J.P. Lininger. I'm the representative for District 6. That includes, I share parts of Algonquin with Representative Hawkins, or Councilwoman Hawkins, rather. Park Hill, Old Louisville, Limerick, Meriwether, Shelby Park, Germantown, Paristown Point, and Taylor Berry.
Councilman Reed.
Hello, I'm Scott Reed, and I could have sworn that Councilwoman Purvis said that we were all old, but that's beside the point. So I represent District 16, and that goes from Riverfield all the way up to Prospect. That includes 14 suburban cities. That also includes the area around Green Spring, Barber Mead, Barber Manor, Brownsboro Farm, in that area as well. So welcome the new people to this committee, and welcome Councilwoman Purvis, whom I'm certain will do a fantastic job.
Good afternoon, Councilman Anthony Piagentini. I represent District 19. On my western border, that is most of the suburban city of Middletown and all of the very small suburban city of Woodland Hills. It tracks Shelbyville Road going east. I have the northern side of Shelbyville Road until you get to just short of the county line, the Shelby County line. I follow the county line along Shelby County and Oldham County up till about LaGrange Road, come back over to the Gene Snyder, and then follow the Gene Snyder back down to Middletown. So I've got, other than the two suburban cities, mostly large residential developments such as Lake Forest and Polo Fields. Thank you.
Again, I'm Councilwoman Purvis, and I represent District 5, which encompasses Chickasaw, Shawnee, Portland, and Russell. So with that, since we've all become a little familiar with each other, this is going to be a very informal meeting and probably a short meeting. So anything that you all want to discuss as far as the purpose of government accountability oversight, or anything that you all have on your mind, any questions you guys may have, for you all to be freshmen and to be on such a committee, you're in for a ride. So we're open for any questions that you may have, and just speak up and ask anything that's on your mind. Oh, and by the way, while we're here, let's introduce two of our, what should I call you all?
The groupies?
Groupies. Yeah. If you all would come to the podium and introduce yourselves to the committee and your purpose.
My name is Althea Jackson. I am the Director of Boards and Commissions. You will see me here every GOA meeting. I come over to present the nominees that the mayor has nominated. My role in all of this is I assist with recruitment, then I have to vet them. They have to go through an application process. I have to vet them, and then I present them to you. Mm-hmm.
Hi, I'm Nicole Pang. I'm an assistant county attorney, and I am here if you have any legal questions. I probably won't be able to answer them on the spot, but I'm happy to take your question under submission and then give you a response from the county attorney's office.
I always do. Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. So first of all, I want to alert the committee to one investigation and one, quote, investigation and one audit that is ongoing, and we might have interim and then final report outs to the committee. The first is, pardon me, the first is the Louisville Metro Housing Authority. So for the freshmen on council last year, we passed a unanimous resolution to do a full-blown audit review of the work of the Louisville Metro Housing Authority. Just to be clear, from a legal perspective, the Louisville Metro Housing Authority does not directly report to the city. They are not actually a full department of metro government like planning and zoning is, or some of these other departments that report to the mayor. They are mandated by federal law, and then they have a quasi relationship with us because we appoint the board and the mayor has the ability to have some influence there. So our investigative powers are not as complete as is dictated in 67C, but we were allowed to have a consultant come in to review their activity. That is an ongoing review. There's a monthly meeting right now, both with LMHA and the consultants, just operational meetings just to keep things going. I suspect we won't have information until probably closer to the summertime to report out to the committee, but just wanted you all to know this is going on. If you want more information, I'm glad to give you that and invite you to any of the monthly operational meetings. I've also asked the Office of Internal Audit to look into the system development charge program. So much smaller audit, but I just wanted people to know that that's going on. For the freshmen, I do want to be really clear about some of the unique aspects of this committee. This is, I don't know, my third or fourth time vice chairing this committee. Number one, it's the only committee that can swear in people before they testify. So whereas in every other committee that you have here, people can come up here and lie to you all the livelong day, and there's no legal repercussions. If you want to know what the actual truth is about any issue, you can have them come here, they can be sworn in, and if they knowingly lie, they're perjuring themselves, right? And then there could be legal repercussions. It's also the only committee that has subpoena power. That subpoena power is usually under the context of an investigation of which you have to have a resolution to begin. So to be super clear about the process, if you want to initiate an investigation, you want to create a resolution first. You can just pass it out of this committee and the investigation begins, or it goes to the full council. Either way, the investigation would begin. And then last thing I just want to point out, and related to that investigative process and swearing in, there has been precedent of us having joint meetings with other committees, and I'll pick on public safety. We've done a few joint meetings with them if we wanted to investigate or question people related to that topic, but also have the powers that this committee has while doing it. So if you ever want to do a joint meeting, that's on the table. And then I do want to be somewhat clear, and maybe this is more from Ms. Jackson, that there's an ad hoc committee looking at the boards and commissions. That group is really intending to examine the global structure of the boards and commissions and make recommendations on improving the efficiency behind it. We are still going to be doing all of the appointments, though. So we're not. I just want to be clear. What I think don't think I'm overstepping the mark on interpreting President Ackerson's intent on that. But that's sort of and maybe Tammy, you can just clarify if I'm wrong. But they are going to be looking at it more globally. We're just going to be executing the day-to-day through the rest of the year until they make recommended changes, and then we'll see how those come out. But just wanted to brief everybody on those quick topics, as well as to the public.
And I just want to mention, when he referenced Louisville Metro Housing Authority, it's been a quasi-government. These are entities that serve the public, TARC, Metropolitan Sewer District, Louisville Water Company. Yeah. These are what we consider quasi-government agencies. So our dollars don't fund them, but they are accountable to us as far as their operations. So is that understandable? Okay. So again, if you all have anything you want to add, anything you want to say, of course you do. Okay.
Thank you, Chair. One of the things that I want to just echo off of is what Councilman Piangentini stated about the ad hoc committee. Yes, you are correct in stating that President Ackerson is going to be having that committee to primarily look at the board design, structure, and the people that are put in applications for that board, just to make sure that it's equitable, just so when we look at it, just another set of eyes. One of the other things, but it's also a huge thing, first I want to say thank you to my colleague, Councilman Purvis, for doing this. This is outside of the box, and that is awesome to be able to make, this committee the first committee just to be able to talk about what it's set up as, what it's supposed to look like, things like that. But I also want to say that coming into Metro Council, it is scary, okay? We can act like it's not, but when you're realistic and authentic, it's life. It's what it is. You hear. So no question is ever a dumb question. Don't ever feel like that you can't ask, oh God, you don't never want to be made to feel like that your answer doesn't matter or that your answer may not make a difference. All 26 council members, brings something very unique and different. And all 26 council members are from different backgrounds and different cultures. So they're not always looking at things in a different set of lenses like you may be. So I would say definitely ask questions, because if you don't ask those questions, you know, we can't help you find the answers, or you can't get different opinions. Different opinions are good, you know, because when you're always agreeing with somebody, you know, to me, somebody's, you know, being fake. I'm not always right, you know, but when you can speak up and say, I don't agree with that, or I'm looking at it like this, you know, sometimes you can, your colleague may, you know, they may go home and think, well, dang, she was right about that, or they may do some investigating and come back and say, so it's just looking at things, because we all represent different communities. And if I'm not working in your community, then I don't know, you know, some of the people that you serve and some of the things that, you know, the challenges that you all may have. So my office, as well as I'm sure every other office, is here to help you navigate through that process, irregardless if you are a Democrat or a Republican. My office is always open, okay, for to help with that. And again, I want to say thank you to the chair and the co-chair for opening this up. I think that this is something that is unique, and honestly, you know, maybe the other committees will do that as well. Thank you.
I'm good. I can offer context, but other than that, no, I'm fine. We haven't, the boards and commissions that Councilman Piagentini mentioned earlier, the ad hoc committee, for those of us who've been around for a while, when we first formed, one of the first things we did is looked at those boards and commissions and tried to decide what we were going to do with them. And we decided that if it was a committee that established policy or that generated revenue or spent revenue, that those would be approved by the council, and every other board or commission we left, you know, up to the mayor's office. I think it's 20 years in, it's time now to go back and look at the work that we did there and understanding boards and commissions better today than we did then, make some decisions about the structure of some of those boards, obviously, as well as, you know, maybe there are some that we are approving that we don't really need to approve, like the amount of money that they control, or statutorily they really can't do anything else. I don't know if we need to appoint people or approve appointments, but there are others I think that we gave up approval of that we may want to reach out and say, hey, the work they're doing is such that we should be paying attention. So again, just offering context as a way of
And maybe we can
talking about that.
revisit some of those.
Right, and I think that's, again, I think that's part of the work that the ad hoc is going to do. Again, I've had a couple conversations with President Ackerson as well, and I know there's some concern that in our initial efforts to get the government up and running, we might have overlooked the importance of some of those boards and commissions, and so
Yes.
I think it's appropriate now to go back and take a look.
That's a good observation. Thank you.
Thank you for doing this, because coming in new, it is a lot to take in. I appreciate it. I wish we had maybe, is there like a definition of each of these committees that kind of give us an oversight of what they all involve maybe? This has been kind of helpful, because going in blindly on some of them, we don't know what to expect. So I just wanted to tell you we appreciate it. Mhm.
Thank you. I don't know what I'd do without him. Anyway, this is probably one of the most challenging committees besides budget. And there are times when maybe we have to look at some things going on at one of the quasi-government agencies, or even one of the internal agencies. It's not, sometimes it can be very stressful. It's not always fun sometimes, because you have to review the information that's been brought to you. You have to determine, are these people performing properly or improperly? You have to identify, honestly, where some of the disparities lie. What are you going to do? What are your recommendations? Sometimes you have to deal with the board. And in some instances, there's been times where we wonder, is the board running the entity or is the CEO running the board? We've seen that before, and that's not how it works. And so you will learn a lot being on this committee. Like I said, it's very challenging. There are times when people may call you, hey, I work at such and such. Just an example, Metro TV. I work for sanitation and I'm not getting paid all my hours and everybody else is complaining. Then, you would come to Councilman Piagentini and myself and say, hey, I'm hearing this. Can we meet with the director? Can we call him in and see what's going on? These are examples of what we do. Over the past few years, we've had some issues with Transit Authority of River City. One in particular, the elderly were having a hard time. The disabled and elderly were having a hard time with one of the subcontractors being transported to certain places. So we had to, investigate these things. We still have some open issues with them. We still have some things that we should probably still have some answers to. But there's been some changes with CHARC, with their administration. So it's something I probably need to revisit. We need to revisit. I feel like for the public's sake and for the sake of their employees that are still concerned about, are they going to be laid off or what have you? These are some things that we probably need to look at again. Yes, sir.
You mind if I add something? Okay, thank you, Madam Chair. What's that? I know. So just for additional context, remember what I said earlier about the power that this committee has. Public safety, for example, I'm going to pick on public safety, but public works, right? For SWIMS, for solid waste management, or public safety with LMPD, they will have, their own sort of purview, and they will have people in and say, well, LMPD, tell me what's going on with this, or, SWIMS, tell me what's going on with this other thing. So they'll do some of that day-to-day stuff. It usually escalates to here when it's clearly more than just asking a few questions and we need to put somebody under oath, or we need to consider an investigation, or we need to dig in further, okay? So that's number one. I do want to differentiate. Not every single question is going to come here, because some of the individual committees will just sort of handle it within their own course, and usually it's just a dialogue between the mayor's office and the committee, and everything's fine. But if it needs to escalate, it will end up escalating here. The other thing that I think the chairwoman made an excellent point. It's something I'm thinking about, and I probably need to go back to the clerk's office and others to dig all this out. And it might be helpful for those that are newer to the committee. But we've done, over the past couple of years, several very large, very in-depth investigations. TARC was one. We did one for the Corrections Department that had a whole report to it, and those reports had action items. Like at the end of it, there were a list of recommendations from third-party experts on, hey, this is what you should do moving forward. That's what we expect out of LMHA, for example. It behooves us to dig up those reports, and let me go through my files. I've been on the committee a long time. Let me get with the clerk's office. Let me get with the former chairs. I'll see how many reports I can dig up over the last couple of years and circulate it to you all, and then we can determine how many of those do we want to follow up on and say, hey, this said you were supposed to do A, B, and C. Did you do it? Right. So there's things that we can do related to those follow-ups as well with the individual departments. Yeah.
Yeah, I want to say, first of all, that I'm really glad to have the delineation between this committee and the ad hoc committee, because I'm serving on both. So it's good to have, that sort of orientation about what we're going to be doing in each committee. The other thing I wanted to ask about is the subpoena power. If I would love to be walked through that process to understand, is that something that we need to vote on as a committee before a subpoena is issued? Do we request one? How does that work?
So, yeah, good question. So we use this subpoena power. During the protests, we were investigating the administration's response to the protests. And then did we use, I think we might have used our subpoena power there. We definitely used it with TARC, and that turned into a whole thing. So what I would tell you, the way it works is, first of all, it does need to be, generally speaking, it needs to be in the context of an investigation. When you create an investigation, you start with a resolution. The resolution drafting for the investigation is incredibly important. Typically, you'll work with the county attorney's office on drafting that resolution, but sometimes, as a matter of fact, and multiple times in my case, it had to be, the county attorney's office was conflicted because they both work for us and Metro and the mayor's office. So we had to, the county attorney's office has third parties, attorneys, that will then become our attorney for that case, right? The verbiage you put in there is incredibly important because that dictates the scope of what you can subpoena, okay? So if the scope of the investigation talks about, hey, I want to investigate TARC's actions here, here, and here, and what they're doing related to disability services and all this, and then all of a sudden you subpoena something related to their maintenance, they can make a motion to squash that in court and not comply with it because it's outside of the scope of the investigation. Once the investigation is created, generally speaking, what we have done is asked for the information first and given the party the opportunity to respond voluntarily, right? And this is something actually now President Ackerson and I went back and forth on because we initiated several investigations back in the day. And we thought it was just a professional courtesy to allow that to happen, to let that organization demonstrate compliance and their desire to work with us. So we only use the subpoena power when they wouldn't comply with those requests. And then, yes, it's something, generally speaking, we have voted on. I will tell you the law is a bit fuzzy on some of that stuff. So what we did in that case was we just on the floor made a motion to subpoena, and that subpoena was going to ask for either testimony or documents. And then once we voted on it, it was considered okay. And then our attorney actually drafted the subpoena and then sent it to the applicable parties. So it wasn't like a separate resolution. It was just a motion you can make on the floor. Right? So that's generally how that worked. Did I answer your question? Perfect. Great. Thank you.
This is just another slight example on how a lot of these, I'm just going to call it accusations, can make it to council. For example, LMHA, Dosker Manor. It wasn't in my district. It was a huge concern. It was in Councilman Ja'Cory Arthur's district at that particular time. Got a lot of calls. I went to him first. So if it's something going on, I went to him first. You go to the person whose district it is first. And he said that, hey, you can take the lead on this. And I'll just support you. So we did that, collected all the information that we needed to. Then we took it to Councilman Dr. Shanklin, who is over housing. So it's just a couple of steps, and you just really don't want to miss those steps. Because if you instead of just bringing something straight to the chair and the co-chair, we want to kind of make sure that it goes to who it needs to get to before it gets to government accountability. So we just kind of check the box of making sure that if it is in a person's district, that's okay, and making sure that if it has something to do with, let's say, planning and zoning, right? We go to Councilman Owens, talk to him about it, and then go to the chair and, just compile all your information so we know what we're talking about before we bring someone in front of her, and our chair and co-chair will look at it and say, well, hey, this really isn't enough, or hey, maybe this is a lot and we need to have this investigated. And that's how we kind of landed it with our co-chair, feeling like, well, hey, maybe we need to have this investigated.
And I think my co-chair would agree with me that this committee will not be used to weaponize internal and quasi-government agencies. So, you can't just come and say, well, I got written up because I was an hour late for work. You were an hour late for work. We're not going to start looking into agencies just because they took proper action against you. So, but we like to think that when things come to us, it's something really serious that needs to be addressed. And the reason why I think these things would need to be addressed is if it is affecting the public's interest. So, yes, ma'am.
Madam Chair?
Yeah.
Hi, Madam Chair.
Yes.
I'm sorry, I didn't go into the queue. I just wanted to say that I've been on this committee most of the time in my 8 years, and we use this subpoena power very, very, very sparingly. And I think it's been 2 or 3 times, and we don't weaponize it. And I think that's a very, very, very good thing. So just so the new people, you use it and just think of it like that. It's something that is to be used, only brought out on very, very special, I wouldn't say special, but it would have to be very egregious set of circumstances, something that, like Councilman Piagentini said a minute ago, after we've given an agency or somebody every opportunity to provide whatever information it is that we've requested. And I remember what it was that he was talking about. And in that particular situation, we did. And so, this is something that has happened only maybe 2 times that I can remember in 8 years. And I think probably in Councilman Kramer's situation, he's been on the council since its inception. He can probably only remember maybe 2 or 3 times as well.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
So I actually have a few questions. Basically, can anyone initiate an investigation or audit, internal or external? And what are the outcomes of the decisions? Like, what is the end result here? Like, who does the follow through, the accountability from the decisions that are made here?
Yeah. So a couple of things. First of all, remember I talked about the Department of Internal Audit. So the Department of Internal Audit, anybody can request. Now, I think on council, you make the request, it goes to the president's office, the president has to sign off on it. But the bottom line is no votes need to be taken. Like the audit that I'm doing of the system development charge, I just said, hey, can you guys squeeze this into your schedule? They said yes. They created a timeline for it. That department handles it. President signed off on it. It really is not a legislative matter, although at the end of it, they will produce a report on the outcomes of the audit. And the Department of Internal Audit sends us periodically, monthly updates on what they're doing. So I want to differentiate between internal audit, which we can make requests of them to check on things, and then, investigations. With investigations, generally speaking, we have hired third parties to run them. I can tell you again, I would tell you, President Ackerson and I had this debate because we initiated several. It is very, 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 very hard for council members to run those investigations, bordering on impossible. Most of us have other jobs and, at least we're part-time legislators. So we have, in almost every circumstance, hired a third-party consultant. Obviously, that has budget impact. So again, you want to use this diplomatically. You're spending taxpayer money on it. But in each case, we've hired these third-party experts. They've come in and in some cases, we bid out the work, sometimes sole source, but sometimes bid it out, depending on whether or not there was a competitive market for that expertise. and then they run it, report to us, like the LMHA one. I have a monthly update meeting with them, with LMHA, with the consultants, and then ultimately, we usually ask for, at a minimum, a report when they're completed, and then sometimes ask for like halfway report outs, right? If they say this is going to take 12 months, we say, hey, can we have an interim report out after 6 months, just to give everybody a sense of how things are going? And those things we will actually do in the committee, in the public eye, have them report out, ask questions, right? And that can dictate what they do in the second half of the work. But that's generally how we do it. And again, I want to differentiate internal audit. Particularly if it's smaller and it's something within their purview, you want to use the internal audit department. They do report to us. They report both to us and the mayor's office simultaneously. And then, but if it's broader than that and it's a full-blown investigation, there's budget impact. And those costs can range anywhere from, $20,000, $30,000 to $100,000 for the bigger investigations.
So if I may. Just drilling down a little bit is all I'm doing. First, the internal auditor, to Councilman Piagentini's point, is an independent entity within Metro government that reports to both us and the mayor. They have a list of things that they plan on investigating during the year. They sit down every year, they compile a list, they'll ask for our assistance, the chair and the vice chair, and they'll put that together. If there is something that you'd like audit to look at, to Councilman Piagentini's point, you can certainly ask, and if they can, they will, right? But they are not in any way obligated to look into something because a council member asked them to. They have a schedule that they're working from, and if they can work it in, they will. If they don't feel like they can. That said, if there is something that this committee agrees that audit needs to look at, we can do that in the form of a resolution, and at that point, it becomes their responsibility. Then it's no longer a request of an individual. So as a member of the committee, you can ask for things. They can say yes, they can say no. As a committee, if we say we need you to do this, that adds a little bit of, a bit of authority behind it. I would make the same argument or offer the same conclusion about, investigations. I put that in air quotes. Any one of us on this committee, or any one of us on council for that matter, can ask questions of any entity here, right? At any entity within government. So certainly you could do that through your office. Because you're on this committee, when you call, it adds a little bit of weight, but still you're a member of the committee. The chair and vice chair can call anybody they want to ask any kinds of questions they want. That's typically the first step. When you start talking about an investigation, I would want to draw a line there. I would want to make it clear. There is a difference between this committee is looking into something and this committee is investigating something. An investigation is far more formal. It's usually initiated either by the chair and vice chair, or it's initiated by a resolution of this committee. So, individuals within, we don't do investigations, right? We might ask questions and things like that. We might encourage the chair to have somebody come in and speak about something. It's the purview of the chair to decide where we're going to go with that. And if it's going to rise to the level of investigation, that's a much more serious undertaking. And again, to Councilman Piagentini's point, we can name investigations that we've done, but we can name them because they're that kind of few, right? It's not, we won't do 12 investigations this year. We just won't do that. We might have a bunch of different people in and ask a bunch of different questions, but the likelihood that would rise to the level of an investigation is pretty slim. So just to put it in a context.
So once a decision is made here, where does it go from there?
If you're asking, so let's go through the formal process, right? We've had an investigation, we've brought folks in, we've done the full scope. Again, to Councilman Piagentini's point, there may be included in the conclusions from the investigation, there may be action items that are required. And it depends on what those action items are required and where we then designate those to go. If it has budget implications, for example, we may have reporting requirements to the budget committee. If it has to do with public safety, we may have reporting requirements to the public safety committee, or we could have reporting requirements back to here. But ultimately, at the end of that investigation, there's usually something that says, these are the conclusions we've drawn, these are the kinds of changes, if you will, that we are, mandating or requesting, and then these are the reporting procedures.
So if those aren't followed, what happens? If we make recommendations and this is what we've concluded, but who follows to make sure they do what they're supposed to do?
That's the accountability arm of this
Okay.
committee. We've not had, that would be the exception, right? That's not the way normally. But if we run into a situation like that, you could conceivably end up with an ordinance, at which point now it's the law.
If I could, Madam Chair, I'll give you a specific example, and make no mistake if this does, I'll give you a specific example of where this has happened, where the recommendations, not only did the mayor not action it, but there's not even consensus on council whether or not we should do it, and that is with the corrections investigation. One of the recommendations coming out of it was to build a new corrections facility. There's not even consensus on council whether or not we should build a new corrections facility. So the mayor has not taken any action on that, but frankly, we have not given him the budget or direction to do that in the budget process. So, I don't want you to think every recommendation that comes out of it is adopted, right? That person makes the recommendations in their report. In some cases, the council may not even agree with it and say, well, okay, that's a great recommendation, but it's given all other priorities, we're not going to do that right now. And there's been other cases where we have insisted on it and the mayor's office disagrees, and you just have to muddy through, that process, either through oversight and other things. But I mean, that's the beautiful part of divided government where, he's got in our current mayor, he's got his responsibilities and his beliefs, and he executes as he believes the public wants him to. And, we will, we have some mechanisms of oversight and checks and balances, but, at the end of the day, one of the things I remind constituents of mine frequently is we can influence, we can budget for things or not budget for things, but the actual execution of that budget is totally within the purview of the mayor. So that is a funky place. I'll give you another example, and that's the King Louis statue. We have now 3 different times voted, one time 23-3 and 2 times unanimously, to restore that statue and put it back on public display. And to this day, it has not moved an inch. Okay, and I can tell you it's going to come up again this year in multiple ways for the mayor to do something about it. But that's a perfect example, another example of where the council has spoken and said, hey, you need to do something, and the executive branch just hasn't done anything about it yet.
And funded it.
Correct.
And funded it. There's money in the budget.
That's my point. Like, we voted on it in a resolution and then twice put money in the budget for it and actually stipulated in the budget that this had to be done, and it's still not done. So, those things happen.
Thank you.
And Councilwoman Bass, that's something else that you're going to find that your constituents are going to require that you be from the executive side instead of from the council side. And you probably already experienced it with the snow, with the streets being iced up, and people are calling you, want to know, what are you going to do? Well, this doesn't fall under my purview. This falls under the mayor's direction. So, a lot of times people expect you to be able to wear all the hats, and you can't. And you have to make them understand, you explain it however you want, but I tell them, listen, you elected me to be your voice and to facilitate help for you and for the area that you live in. But just be prepared that they will come to you and expect you to know all and do all. So, thank you. Welcome.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I have served on government accountability or government oversight, I think, a couple of years. And I've always looked at this committee as the rubber meets the road committee. And that is like the buck stops here. And so we have the opportunity to educate our constituency by bringing in certain elements of government that they may not be aware of. We can educate them on our role versus the mayor's role and call in different departments and have them talk about what they're responsible for. Because, like to your point, oftentimes they look at us as being the administrators when we are the legislators. And so I think government accountability has a great opportunity to educate our community by bringing those public works or some other type of department in to explain exactly what they're doing. And it's our job to make sure that what they say they're responsible for doing is exactly what they're doing. And if they're not, just ask the questions and hold them accountable. That's what oversight is to me.
You know, I want to say this real quick. I just had a thought that, like my colleagues are saying, the money that has been budgeted for the past 2 years for King Louis, there are oftentimes that the council will budget like public works and fire department, you know, your budget for certain things, but you don't see these things come to fruition. And then your constituents are screaming at you, well, you all were supposed to do this. You're supposed to clean up the alleys, what have you. We're like, well, yeah, we did budget for these projects, but it's not happening. And so I do think that it is time that we start bringing in these internal agencies and asking them, hey, what's going on? Why isn't this happening? That's a real good point that you guys have made. So thank you all for saying that, because we owe an explanation to our constituents, and I'm not going to take the heat alone. So thank you. I'm sorry, Councilwoman Hawkins.
In that process of the snow and everything, we did find out that the routes have not been updated for the last 5 years. So that is something that we need to be looking into, definitely to see who does this, who puts, and how do your neighborhood get on these routes? You know, what makes this street any different than this street? So I do believe that a lot of those routes that they were taking were just routes that was on their route. And that route just has not been updated. So I think that would be something that we definitely need to look into, is assuring that a lot of those streets and neighborhoods that still have been affected by this are definitely put on those routes.
Right, because if I'm going to slip and fall one more time, someone's going to have to tell me something. So you're right. Does anybody else? Yes, JP.
And so process-wise, that's a great example of, you know, that's in your district. Obviously, you're talking to your constituents, your neighbors. They're raising concerns about different streets and where they are on the snow routes. And then the next step in that process is, let's kick that over to Public Works. Let's talk to Public Works about how we're arriving at these decisions. And then if there's a problem in Public Works as a committee saying, well, you know, we're hitting kind of a wall here. We're not getting a lot of cooperation from Public Works on how these decisions are being made, or even we have concerns about how these decisions are being made, then that maybe comes over to this committee.
Yeah, that's basically where I was getting at, because I feel like we've had so many constituents come to us, and they just want the fruition of what we have done, the processes, and let's just say 2025 will be the year of accountability. Yes, thank you.
Motion to adjourn.
If no one has anything else to say or discuss, I would say this meeting is adjourned. Thank you.